Hey everyone, Cursed Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted. That way I can finally leave here. We've got a Henzie Toolbox Torre deck, which is a Blitz deck. This deck comes from Andre, who says, I need to make the last 15 or so cuts from the deck and a general revision of the list in case I'm missing some must-have cards. Their restrictions are no original duels, no single card that's not listed there that's worth $50+. I don't think we're going to hit that because the deck already has, I believe, every card of value that I'd like to put in. So, as always, I put the deck list in the video description below if you would like to open it up while you watch or listen to this video. Go through it, see what you would change, and if we agree on it. If you think of anything that I don't think of, please put it in the comments below so that we can make the deck as good as it can be. So who is Henzie and why are we using them? Henzie is a 3 mana enjund colors, 3/3 Devil Rogue that says all of our creatures that are 4 mana and up have Blitz. Blitz means that you can cast them for the Blitz card cost. They gain haste immediately, and then at end of turn they are sacrificed, and when they are sacrificed, you draw a card. I'm going to look up a Blitz card just in case if it's leave play. Oh, I should have this here. Oracle. Just in case is it leave play or when they sacrifice? When this creature dies, draw a card. So it is not leaving play that we care about, is they need to die. So Henzie also has a second ability that's important, is that our Blitz costs 1 less for each time we've cast this commander, which is kind of strange because I don't imagine you're going to be able to cast Henzie a bunch of times. But if we imagine the floor being, if you've cast Henzie, all your Blitz cost 1 less, that's already pretty nice, and it reduces the amount of ramping that we need to do. So looking at a glance, this deck has 111 cards. So we are making 11 cuts minimum. So we're going to look for the weakest cards in this set and see if in this deck and see what we can cut out. We have a really nice curve. I am a big fan. Remember that this is the breaking point for Henzie's, I want to call him Henry, Henzie's ability. So it does make sense that this goes down a little and then comes back up. So I think that's nice. We have 1 9-mana permanent, which is the party tree, which is the Great Henge, which is not 9 mana, which is nice. And then after that, I believe we have the 2, yes, 8 mana Archon of Cruelty, Craterhoof Behemoth, both of which are cards that I would consider to be very, very powerful in this deck, and I'm not interested in getting rid of it. So, what do we cut? The first thing I would do, if given this problem, is to examine what the power level of the deck is and adjust accordingly. So one of the things here I would say right off the bat is that we have Sneak Attack, we have Vampiric Tutor, we have a lot of very strong cards. We have tutors, we have free spells to prevent counters or removal. So I'm looking for cards that significantly swing our deck into winning when we blitz them. Now, part of the reason I'm not looking too much into the non-creatures is because the non-creatures are very strong. I like almost all of them. The only thing I believe is missing is Feign Death effects because they allow you to instantly reanimate one of those creatures. But I'm trying not to give too many additions, but I'm going to suggest that some of the Feign Death effects could go in here at a low opportunity cost. So let us go. I want to really briefly look at everything that's below 4 mana because these are the cards that we cannot cheat out into play. So I'm expecting them to be all ramp cards, yeah, which they pretty much all are. Yeah, so that makes sense. This would be our setup phase, and then we will go into our win phase, if we may. Itali's up here at 0 mana. I'm not sure why this is. I don't think there is a way to cheat Atali out by itself. So I'm going to leave that there. We're going to come back to Atali. Atali's interesting. But let's take a look. So, what are the weaker cards in this section versus the others? So, if you pop out to me, immediately I'm looking at something like if we're looking at stuff like Archon of Cruelty and Necron Deathmark and Junji, I think these are World Shaper. I think these are the stronger ones. So let's look at the ones that aren't as strong. Solemn Simulacrum is not strong enough in a deck like this. I would say that if you really want this effect, maybe you'd be willing to pay the extra mana for Golos, even though Golos doesn't have Undying effect like Solemn Simulacrum does. Mainly because Solemn Simulacrum just doesn't do enough these days. Even as a 3 mana, put a land into play and then draw a card. I guess you draw 2 cards when it dies, so it's not. I just don't love it because I have to compare it to other cards such as Disciple of Bolas or where are you? World Shaper. World Shaper particularly feels very strong here, and I would like it 9 times out of 10 over Solemn Simulacrum. So maybe this is just a nice little glue card that you can still play and still ramp with, but I think it's weaker. I think Kethek also stands out. This is the beginning of your end step. You may sacrifice another creature, and then you can then summon a non-creature card with lesser mana value. I get that it's kind of cheating out the getting around the blitz cost and still getting another advantage on it, but I feel like this is what we call like you're playing bad cards to make your good cards better. You know, if you blitz a lot of these targets, let's say World Shaper again, if you blitz World Shaper, you don't really need to then sacrifice it and try to get one of your mana dorks out. I think it's already good enough. Meanwhile, you're going to be stuck with your guy. Where was he again? Kethek, who can't even sacrifice itself, so you can't blitz out Kethek, so you have to play Kethek normally. I would say Kethek is maybe at a lower power version of this deck, it would be okay, but at this point, I don't think it's good enough. Let's see. I, I don't know. Atsushi feels close. It's kind of draw 3, it's kind of ramp 3, but it's not really. I think it's fine. I think it would be this or Solemn Simulacrum. I wouldn't play both. I think it's one or the other. Primeval Titan Herald also feels like just another kind of the 4 mana slot seems to have a lot of kind of like so Solemn Simulacrum, Rampant Rejuvenator, World Shaper, Primeval Herald, Atsushi. Am I missing one? Druid of Purification? No. Okay. So a lot of these kind of do the same thing. So I would maybe cut 1 or 2. I don't think you need this effect so many times. I get that ramping is really important, but you've ramped your way here, right? I don't know if you need to continue ramping to much further because you're already reducing the cost. Like let's say let's do the situation where you cast Henzie on the previous turn and you play a land. You're up to 4 mana, which means the goal is to blitz something for 5 mana. That's where our sweet spot is going to be. So having a card that ramps you to like 6 or 7 is less necessary because you're going to get there. You have enough cards that you can play out with blitz to get there. Let's take a second and see what we have at 5. Balrog attacks or dies. I think that's fine. Ilharg is particularly good here. Junji is particularly good. Seed Guide Ash is another ramp card that I feel like maybe you just have enough ramp. 3 forests is a lot, but it's also just okay. You're paying 5 mana for it. I would put this in the same list and maybe think about one of those. Terror of the Peaks is interesting, but I feel weaker than it usually is because casting it with Blitz is not where you want to be because you want Terror of the Beaks to stay in play. So though I appreciate how scary it is less scary here. I'm not saying remove it, but it does feel like a weaker card in comparison to the others because it does not. It needs to be played fairly to take advantage of its effect, or you need to play the terror. You need to blitz the terror and then cheat out a few more creatures really quickly, which is harder than it seems. Even though your blitz creatures replace themselves, it's still going to be a lot of mana. Unless you're using something like sneak attack, which then go ahead. Terror of the Peaks feels kind of medium here. It's a finisher, much like Crater Hoof Behemoth, but Terror of the Peaks feels weaker because it needs more things to be. It needs more hoops for you to jump through, whereas Crater Hoof Behemoth is happy to be played and just go out swinging. Grave Titan also I would consider about cutting. I'm really generally unimpressed with Grave Titan, especially the higher power level of our decks, and this deck feels particularly high power level. Grave Titan is just okay here. It is 4/2/2s you get to keep and draw a card, and someone takes 6 damage. I think that's fine. I don't know. In comparison to everything else, this just kind of builds you a board. And a lot of your cards don't particularly work well with that board. Like you're not sacrificing these to Life Legacy. You're not using Eldritch Evolution. Greater Good doesn't work with the zombies. I don't think this is where you want to be. I think you'll play it, you'll attack once, you'll have a bunch of creatures, and that's it. You'll kind of regret playing it over. Like you could have played something else. Green Warden of Murasa is 2 Ewits stapled together for 5 mana if you blitz it. I think that's fine. I think that's pretty good. I think it's not as impressive because you need cards in the graveyard. So it can't be like your first blitz, but it works very well on subsequent blitzes. If you blitz a few of the other cards and you get to blitz this out after, this is really, really nice. Inferno Titan is similar to Grave Titan, but I'm going to give it a pass because dealing 6 damage across the board, divided in any way you want, is particularly strong. You still draw the card out of it. It's still 6 damage, but would I pay 5 mana, deal 6 damage in any number? I don't know if I would. And draw a card? Maybe. It's close. It's really, really close. I think. So one of the things we have to think about with Blitz is what if I have Swords to Plowshares? What if you cast Inferno Titan with Blitz and you say combat and I say hold on and I Swords to Plowshare your Inferno Titan? So you don't get the card draw, you don't get the second attack trigger, you don't get a dies trigger. I say second attack trigger, that's specific to Titans. You don't get an attack trigger and you don't get a dies trigger. Would you still be okay with that? And some of these you're going to be okay with that because the plus side is so high. Like, for example, Junji. If Junji triggers, you are very, very far ahead because you get one of your best creatures back into play. And so if I source to Plowshares Junji, your response is probably going to be, that's fair, right? I don't think you can be upset that I've done that because if you got away with it, you would be in a very far lead. If I do that to Inferno Titan, do you feel like you got, like it was worth spending 5 mana on that turn? Probably not. Once again, this is close because it depends on your board state. I'm thinking of my decks, and in early game, if I have things like Thalia, Dark Confidant, Timna, cards like this that are really strong in my colors, an Inferno Titan that can attack right away will wipe my board, which is very impressive. I think it's really, really strong. But once again, I play a +1/+1 counter theme because I play Brina. If my creatures just grow out of it, all of a sudden this isn't impressive at all. I think you'll at least get to destroy 1 or 2 creatures, and I mean you have I feel like you have Necron Deathmark for that to destroy 1 creature. So I'm not too impressed. Kogla also very, very close. Kogla feels so it's 5 mana, destroy a creature, and then destroy an artifact or enchantment, and then draw a card. and you have to attack the player who has the artifact or enchantment. This is close. Once again, this is close. I feel like this is nice because at least the ETB will trigger even if I have Swords to Plowshares. Kogla is close to be on the cutting to be cut. I don't think it's particularly good enough. Kokushu is really, really strong if you're able to get it to work. If you're going to use Kokushu, I would like if you had some instant sacrifices. This is similar to the Swords to Plowshare idea, right? If you play, oh, let's go Village Rights. If you play Kokushu, you need Kokushu to die, and then you need to be able to reanimate them because they don't represent that much damage by themselves. They represent a ton of damage as a combo. If you can reanimate and sacrifice Kokushu a few times in a row, you are you are so far ahead and you've done so much damage. But Kokushu is kind of a fair card where you swing in with 5 and deal 10 damage across the board. I guess it's not 10. It's 10 to one opponent, 5 to the others. That's just fine. I don't know. This is close. This is like a classic commander card, but I don't think this is exactly I think the deck has outpowered. Like it's too powerful for Kokushu. So I don't think that's really where we want to be. It just stands out as like the floor is so low. And I know it's funny that I'm saying the floor of 5 mana, haste dragon, deal 5 damage, then sacrifice, then it dies, you draw a card, and each opponent loses 5 more life and you gain 15. It's just the thing is I feel like at this power level of commander, all that's going to do is annoy your opponents. It's not going to defeat anyone, and if it does, it's not defeating them in a way that like any other card here wouldn't at the end step. At the end step, sorry, at the top of your curve, all of these cards are going to be particularly strong. So Kokushu feeling like it just does that, whereas Crater Hoof Behemoth or Archon of Cruelty puts you so much further ahead. I'm kind of unimpressed. Mikaeus is really, really good here. I really like Mikaeus here. I don't think you have any humans up here, as you shouldn't. Very, very happy with that. I think Mikaeus is a fantastic touch. It is like Terror of the Peaks in theory, where you have to play it and you have to keep it alive. But unlike Terror of the Peaks, the ceiling is much, much higher because getting any of these creatures back, especially ones with ETB abilities, is really, really good. So I like Mikaeus here. Zayatora is fine. Zayatora is kind of like Kefik, where we're just finding another way to take advantage of the end step trigger, but it can't sacrifice itself, and you have greater good for that ability. So I'm not too impressed. I like the fact that it gets 3 treasures, but I don't think it's particularly strong either. I would consider cutting that. Giant Adaphage is cute, but I would play Kokusho. Have I been saying this wrong the whole time? Kokusho. I would play Kokusho over the Giant Adaphage, and I already don't want you to play Kokusho, so I don't want you to play Giant Adaphage. Protein Hulk is great, namely because you're not going to do a combo, you're just going to grab one of your 6 mana spells. I think that's fine. Tree Shaker Chimera is good because it stops blockers and then draws you 4 cards. I think that's fine. I don't think it's very, very impressive, but I think that's fine. But Archon of Cruelty and Craterhoof Behemoth kind of stand out. Are you playing Worldly Tutor? You are. I find it a little strange that you have so many, like there's such a wide berth between your strongest high mana cards and your weakest ones. Like Archon of Cruelty and Craterhoof Behemoth completely dwarf Tree Shaker Chimera, right? Like there's no universe that you would get Tree Shaker. If you had the option, which one would you blitz out, right? I think generally, depending on your board, if you have a board to win, Craterhoof Behemoth, but otherwise Archon is always just going to be one of the strongest things you can do. Even if it just hits one opponent, it doesn't matter because you get so far ahead. So you have tutors to grab the right ones. Why are we playing the weaker ones here? In fact, I'm almost fine. I've changed my mind on Kokusho Kokusho because the other ones are just much weaker. So keep Kokusho at 6 mana especially, and then be a little more critical on those ones. Those are my thoughts on the creatures. I feel like the rest of the deck is really strong. I think these are the ones that you can cut. I'm trying to think. You mentioned that what are cards that you might not have thought of? The Feign Death cards come to mind because they let you rebuy something, where Saw in Half kind of does that, but costs 3 mana. Saw in Half is just really strong though, so I don't know if I would say no to that here. You have Reanimate, yep. Yeah, you have a particularly strong deck. I think it just requires you to be a little more critical about which cards you're going to be playing. Bloom Tender, just looking at it, I don't know if I'd just rather another 1 mana dork um, instead of a card that may tap for 2 or 3. The idea is Henzie's going to be out, so Bloom Tender always taps for 3. Okay, maybe with that in mind, I think it's fine. But the deck itself is strong. I think if you're just a little more strict on which hate pieces to take, which top of the curve creatures to take out, you'll just have a better time. This is a deck where you're not overwhelming your opponents with a myriad of different creatures. It is a deck where you are beating them with the raw advantage and strength of individual cards, with the ability for them to just scale you out of proportion because you're kind of cheating them out, but you're also getting added effects with Archon of Cruelty triggering twice, or Craterhoof Behemoth just stomping the board down. I think you'll be particularly happy. I'm wondering if there's any other. Living Death is really good here. I'm trying to think if there's one more like mass reanimation spell you want to play, but I don't think even that with reanimate. Oh, you know what you should be playing? Okay, I'll make one more suggestion. Life and Death. Life and Death is reanimate at 2 mana. That's all it is. It is just reanimate 2 mana. Life is cute if you want to use Craterhoof Behemoth, but beyond that, just Death. Death is reanimate for 2 mana, and with the sheer power of the cards you're playing, being able to bring one back, just having another reanimate effect, I think will be very good. And the way I always look at it is that this card is 12 cents. This card is less than 50 cents, and the only thing that holds it back is that you need both black and green, and you have black and green, and you already have Reanimate, so play a second copy of Reanimate at 2 mana, is what I would suggest. All right, I hope all of this helped. I think the deck is really good. I think this deck is very close to being a final copy of itself. Like, I think it's almost done. So I want to see which cards you're going to take out, and I want to see what you end up with when you cut down to a regular number of cards. What is kept, because I think this deck is almost done. So I'd be really happy to see it to completion. I've been thinking that I want to set up a kind of a big Google Docs or a big spreadsheet of decks that are finished, so they can be used as examples for people who want to build that deck of like, oh, if I just wanted to, make this a high-powered deck and really just finish it off, what does a finished list kind of look like? And I think this is really close to that. So I hope if you do any like edits and things like that, I think like I would love to see it. Please send it again. And I don't think you need original duels. I think that was something you had said. You don't want to put the original duels. I don't think there's much left to do. I don't think this is the kind of deck that you need to be putting, I don't know, Ancient Tomb or anything. Like I'm sure would make it stronger, but the deck is already very strong. Outside of going to CEDH, I think you're basically hitting the ceiling of this deck, which is pretty good. I think that's a pretty good ceiling for Henzie to be able to reach. All right. As I was saying, if you'd like to send me another draft or any deck, the link to the form is down below. And Sorry, I'm just realizing I didn't talk about Atali. I'm gonna end with Atali and then we'll finish up. Atali seems okay. I'm confused why you're playing this Atali and not the other, because the other one is 6 mana, which is 5 mana on Blitz, and with the attack trigger you get around its one downside without paying their cost. Do they both say that? Are you ever going to flip this, I guess? This is trample though. Okay, I think this might be worth the extra mana. I don't know why it's at 0, but yes, I think Atali is good enough. Okay. I would love to see another draft of this deck or any deck. Please send it to me in the form below. And if you could like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing, I would be always happy because our YouTube channel is growing and it is difficult to do so. So any help is always appreciated. This is an excellent deck, and I can't wait to see the next draft.